Hi, everyone, and welcome to this very 2020 get-together. It's kind of surreal seeing everybody on a screen like this together in this kind of virtual room. We're here because tomorrow night you're being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which traditionally you'd be in Cleveland all sharing a stage together. But, you know, I don't know if you heard, but 2020 happened and a pandemic happened. And so Trent, I know you were really keen to get your friends and fellow inductees into the same space just to have a moment to kind of look back over the last 30 plus years of Nine Inch Nails, which is what you see in front of you on screen now if you're watching. And, you know, I'm going to sort of have a very casual conversation with the band over the next 45 minutes, and the last 15 minutes love to get some fan questions. So wherever you're watching this, just reply in the comments with your questions, and we'll grab those at the end. But welcome everyone, and I know Alessandro, you're in Berlin, but the rest of you are in the United States, where I hear there's been an election and it's been fairly chaotic. I just wanted to check that you're all actually doing okay, because you have a president who's throwing his toys out of the cot.
I think we're doing okay. You know, I'm grateful that we have an hour where we actually can't watch the news.
And I know, Trent, you've had various thoughts about award ceremonies over the years and been relatively vocal about those. And, you know, here we are with you and your band being inducted. I'm just wondering, you know, what it was like getting the call about this, because it's pretty incredible, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it was strange, and it was unexpected, and it was a bit surreal. And I think, you know, over the years, my thoughts on awards and accolades have shifted a bit. You know, I've been on the extreme cynical side. Really what it comes down to is an award is value, has as much merit as the entity that's giving it to. You know, like when Atticus and I were up for an Oscar, and we saw the kind of way that the Academy, how serious it took it, and how many hurdles and how seriously the whole.
Oh, hello, Danny.
Just got to pause for a second. Danny Lohner has joined us. Hey, Danny.
Welcome.
Welcome, Danny.
Where have you been, Danny? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Is everything all right?
I can't talk.
I'm the only one that doesn't have earbuds. Trent, you got earbuds in? Yeah. I should have got earbuds. All right. Sorry. Go ahead, Trent. I didn't interrupt.
The headphones look cool, though.
Maybe
I was rambling on about awards stuff. Point is, when I was invited to induct The Cure last year, and I was actually in the place, and I'm sitting with Radiohead guys and David Byrne, and we're watching Brian Ferry. It changed somehow. Kind of felt legit in a way, you know. And a lot of the cynicism kind of peeled away. And when I walked out to give the induction speech for The Cure, and I saw that band come up, and I saw how much it meant to them, and the crowd of people that really were there excited about The Cure, you know, it made me think, hey, it's worth being in the moment and kind of taking, as absurd as some of these things are, and as impractical as it is to try to, you know, select who in the world of rock deserves this and who doesn't. It's all ridiculous. But with that said, you know, when we got the call, it was pretty, it felt pretty good. It felt kind of surreal, and it felt strange. And over the months that followed that, where you then are faced with the logistics of who gets inducted, you know, who gets invited. I know what the show changed to me was it became more about life's work, you know, the work of Nine Inch Nails collectively from the beginning to the end, and trying to, from my perspective, acknowledge all the people involved. I'd like to say talent was involved, but a lot of it also was luck and guidance and input and teamwork and camaraderie. And anyway, I was really looking forward to the show, not so much to play, but just to be around the collective gang and take a minute where hopefully we could all kind of say, hey, we did something good, allow ourselves to feel okay about it for a minute. And then with COVID, we lost that opportunity. And that show that's going to be on tomorrow won't make up for that experience. So I thought in a lesser way, let's get everyone together in some format and have a chance to just say hi and talk a bit.
And how did you find out, Chris? I mean, you've been there right since the beginning of this thing. How is this all feeling for you?
I was just excited that the band was even getting in, and then Trent, I get a random email from Trent. Hey, you got a minute to talk? And, I was sure. So and he told me just over the phone, and I was totally blown away. I think it's awesome. And to echo Trent, it is actually really special. Maybe we're just getting old, but that thing of actually being able to say it's okay to enjoy something that I accomplished is not a bad thing. So
yeah,
trying to enjoy it.
And Alan, I think you're the youngest ever inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Congratulations on being young.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And the prick who can play everything better than everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
It is irritating, though.
The math worked out that way.
I wanted to go right back to the beginning of this band, and maybe this is something for you, Chris, because I think it's very easy to see Nine Inch Nails as being this big thing now, this big force. But you started just like any other band, and you were driving around in Trent's hatchback, opening for other bands. Like how was that in those early days?
Scary. And the band you're thinking of is Skinny Puppy. 1988 was when we did that in the hatchback up and down the East Coast. That particular tour, before there was ever a record deal or anything, was an opportunity. And at that point we never even thought about a band, Trump was just working on songs, and so we put that whole live thing together in 4 days. Remember that? And the reel-to-reel, and then we had this giant reel-to-reel machine on stage as our playback machine. And I had a thread tape halfway through the show, and for the second reel. I mean, it was harrowing, but also super exciting, And then you start opening up for bands that that you just have loved your whole life, like Peter Murphy, Jesus and Mary Chain, and then next thing you know, you got people opening up for you, and everything else from Downward Spiral and on for all you guys. So. Seeing that transition, it was pretty weird. It was a crazy ride.
Yeah, and I mean, Trent, you'd been in bands before. When you started Nine Inch Nails, did you have an inkling of where this thing was going to go? Like, did you feel it in your bones that it was like something special and what it would become at all?
Well, it was the first time I was able to express myself and find my own voice, and that felt special. And the climate at the time was one of, it was never to imagine it was going to be huge. We were thinking, hey, if someday we could get a record deal to put out a 12-inch that someone paid for it, that would be success. And eventually, hey, if we could get a record out around the world, that would be success. And there was a lot of concern about making sure it had time to kind of gestate and figure out what it was, rather than try to cater towards a format or an audience or anything like that, if that makes sense. Today, that seems a strange thing to even say, but then you didn't want to see it get ground up and turned into something that wasn't true to what it should be, because I knew, in the early days, I was still trying to figure out what is it that I have to say, and what is it that I was finding my footing in those early days with Chris. In pre-record, I'm glad everyone didn't have cell phones with cameras in their pockets because it was pretty shitty, you know. Because we were winging it. We were trying to figure it out, you know.
Yeah.
And I think our winging it kind of lasted up into that first Lollapalooza date where it dawned on me we were on a pro tour. This was in Phoenix. And, you know, I remember seeing Living Color with their had road cases and perfectly wrapped snakes and road crew, just pro shit. And I looked down and I could see the blue guitar cable that my dad got me for my 15th birthday, you know, still. And duct tape, junk equipment, you know, and then our stuff melts on the first song and the first show of that tour. It was like, okay, we got to take it up a notch of professionalism. But our hearts were in the right place.
Was that the first show that happened? Arizona?
Yeah, the bed was shit on the first show.
That's so sad. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward to a performance like Woodstock in '94, which, you know, you're touring on this album, The Downward Spiral, which was this huge thing, and that was this huge performance. It's pay-per-view to literally, I think, 25 million homes, and yet that was still organic because you end up, you know, it's famous because you're covered in mud. It was a mad show. I think gear was broken. I believe bones were broken as well. Can you just, you know, Robin and Danny, maybe this is one for you guys, just like, what was that show like at the time? Not looking back on it in hindsight, but being there in the moment. What was that like? Did you know what was happening?
I certainly did not. I had no clue the gravity or the relevance of that moment. I'm sure there was a conversation kind of leading to it, but after that conversation, there was no kind of internet to bolster and to kind of, you know, pave the way for me to kind of imagine that. And it was another stop on a very long list of dates in a spiral bound book, honestly, until we arrived. And that slow crawl, a couple miles on the bus to the, the bus lot where we were kind of parked maybe a full day before our set. And there was no, quick jaunt back to the hotel or anything like that. We were just kind of there. And for the first time, I was seeing signs that said Aerosmith or Metallica or Crosby, Stills and Nash, you know, with arrows to their place, which was right next to our place. And that was starting to just come slowly, creep in. And then I saw our set time that we were sandwiched kind of between all these bands. And, we woke up to the, on the bus, or I did anyway, in midday and peeled the curtains back. And the first person I saw on the Woodstock grounds was David Crosby.
You stole my line.
Stole line?
That was the only thing I had to contribute.
Well, tell him. David
I can add to it. I got a good one to add to it.
You're omitting one big detail.
I interrupted.
Go ahead, Danny.
I feel like I just stepped on my boy
no,
here.
Come on, this is us. We're doing this together.
All right, so yeah, we did wake up. I remember we went a day early the night before, and we got to see Aphex Twin. If I'm keeping my dates.
It was
oof.
Oof. He sat behind the gear.
Oh no, it was Danny. It was the orb. It was.
I don't know.
It was the orb. I thought.
Yep.
Anyway,
they all sound the same to me. No, but yeah, and what Robin was saying, we woke up late because we were like watching we watched, I think, Aphex Twin or the Orb, and David Crosby was outside the bus, like he said, and it was like, there's a fucking power line fell on the bus. Don't anyone touch anything metal and don't take a piss or whatever. And I was like, oh, and then I went straight to the bathroom and had a morning piss and couldn't stop midstream and was totally afraid, but it was a plastic toilet. Yeah. Sorry, Ron.
Let me add 1 second. I was always the first person up because I can't sleep ever, and we made the brilliant decision. Let's get there 24 hours before, 20 hours before we're going to play, so we can just bask in the anxiety of an upcoming show. I get up, and I look out the front of the bus, and I hear a boom.
Oh, you heard that.
And then I see people going. I'm like, are you talking to me? What the fuck? I'm in my underwear. Don't touch anything. A transformer blew up and there's live power cables laying on the roof of your bus. Oh, so I went back to the bunks and said, guys, get up. Try not to touch any metal because we might get electrocuted. And that's when David Crosby was outside. I remember, like a bathrobe or something, as I remember. It was the start of a very weird day.
Or it could have been the end of you all, at that moment.
That's true.
Yeah, I want to pick up with one of the. It was exciting to see all the other bands because again, it was kind of a first. We weren't doing a lot of festivals, to my memory, until then.
None.
And it was interesting to see so many other groups. But I started for the first time to think about who's going to be in the audience and who are we playing before and after, and how are they going to react to our set, or are they positioning themselves for the next band, and then how's Trent going to react to that? And it was these were kind of new, kind of unsettling thoughts that were kind of walking with me to the stage. But when by the first downbeat, it really felt like our audience, our moment in the evening, the timing of it all, in the day, and in whatever was happening in the. It felt alive and vital and really important.
Yeah. Well, something happened, because I think you can, watching that footage back, it's all on YouTube, you can feel it there, which is rare for a sort of a pro shop festival thing, like you could feel that. And I feel like it set the tone for you guys, for the whole rest of the rest of you coming into the band, where Nine Inch Nails is this unpredictable thing where, sure, things are curated to a degree as shows get bigger, but it's still that you don't know what's going to happen. And I think, Chris and Danny again, and Trent, those early shows were particularly crazy. Like there were bones broken. I think, Danny, you sent me an email the other day talking about, this wasn't violence at a show, but on a bus stop, I think. And you had that wonderful description of what happened to Robin's finger. Oh. But there were bones broken the whole way along your early careers. Like, it was madness.
Let me say something about the Woodstock thing, if we're moving off of that, like that Robin made me think of, because I didn't feel the same way he did. Like, it was all good as soon as the music started. Because I remember that we were all muddy and freezing cold and stuff, and there was a gear problem, and we were running late, and we're standing up on the backstage area, on the stage, but like behind the gear, and it's like wind and it's freezing. Yeah. And still not a problem, and then when it finally happened and Larry Bud Melman said, punch your balls off for Nine Inch Nails, we went out on stage, and I thought there would be carpet on the stage. Oh, yeah. Because we always had carpet on the stage, whatever, or clubs had carpet, whatever. And we got out there, and it was an ice skating rink. It was just clear, and we didn't know it. I didn't know it until we got out there. Yeah. And then, I don't know, maybe the first or second song, Trent insisted, or probably still does, have these super heavy, in fact, Chris probably has a story about this, heavy weighted microphone stand. And Trent throws it up in the air, and boom, it cuts the power all on my side of the stage, the right side of the stage. It was like the beginning of the set. So it's like all hell's breaking loose, we're falling and blah, blah, blah. And I do remember, after it was done, being like afraid for Trent to see it, basically. I was like pretty new. And my mom had recorded it. Once again, like no internet and all that shit. So my mom recorded it down in Texas, and she like FedExed us the video the next day or whatever. And I don't know if you remember this, Trent, or not, but my mom sent it to us and we watched it. And I was like, knowing it wasn't going to be. And Trent was like, at the time you were bummed about it, I think. And, but I watched it back recently, and to me, all the mistakes actually make it awesome.
Mm.
It seems violent and chaotic and awesome. But at the time, it felt like I'm going to get fired.
But that show, I knew when we went on stage, it felt something, we were in the right place at the right time. It just sometimes, through no fault or planning of your own, you just can kind of tell when the planets have lined up. And it felt perfect being on stage. And yes, it was what we didn't know. It was slippery. It was super hard to play with mud covering in your eyes. It stung, and your fingers couldn't stay on the frets right. And there was shitloads of mistakes, but our hearts were in it, and it felt vital in the moment to me.
Who went on before us? Robin was saying, I didn't ever think about that. Who was it that went on before us? Do you know?
I think it was Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
It was.
Yeah.
I can remember standing up there. Go ahead, sorry.
It was also the first time we were playing in front of a television camera crew.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
First row, a lot of people asked me about how many people were there and what was it like to stand in front of however many hundreds of thousands of people. But there was the camera crew, then there was a long lip of cable mess, and then there was another, drop down from the stage wide enough to drive an ambulance through, and then the barricade, and then the first, row of mud people, and then it just didn't stop.
Yeah. I do want to touch, because it is fascinating to me the number of injuries you sustained in those early days. Do you have like a favorite injury moment?
No.
Was that fun, or was it like incredibly stressful at the time? Because there were some it was full on.
Let me say something real quick. I know I keep talking, but so we had this mud fight, and Trent kicked my ass, and I ended up with a cracked rib, and I didn't know it yet until it was all said and done. So that's my second injury. First injury was in Vegas at like a theater, and I remember it was the end of Get Down, Make Love, and I had to rush to change from guitar to bass really fast, but because the song would start or whatever. And if I didn't have the bass, any song I played bass on, it was what Trent would cue his vocals off of. So if I didn't have it, once again, I'm going to get fired. And so I remember, so I would be pivoting all the time at the end of that song. I would pivot right before it went black, and to go get my bass, switch from guitar to bass. And I just remember getting sideswiped like a car crash, and Trent, I guess, flew into me, and I hit my hand all weird, the one that you fret with, and it was that feeling of like something bad just happened. You know what I mean? Like where it's like you get that and I kept playing like bar chords with 2 fingers and this, that, and the other. But not one of my better stories, but that's that story. Robin, though, I told him about your finger in that Madison Square Garden when we were going to the sound check. I think that's a cool story.
Nothing to do with me, by the way.
Oh, not that you can complain.
I don't know what story it is, but it was emotionally devastating to be canceling that Madison Square Garden show. First time we were ever kind of showing up there. And
explain what happened though. Like when we were
bus was coming to was nearing the hotel in Manhattan, and we were at a bunch of traffic lights, and the
gig
bus,
actually.
Our bus stopped short because another truck,
FedEx truck,
run a yellow light or something like this.
It was a FedEx truck,
and I wanted to be the first off the bus because I had friends and family that I wanted to be in contact with, and I had to like get into the building to use the telephone to communicate with them. And so I was standing at the junk bunk, the bunk, packing my day bag. And when the bus stopped short, I kind of was, went horizontal to the scene and barely got my hands up above my face before it hit the TV console or whatever behind the driver, and the bone popped off, and the nail flew up in slow motion and landed in Trent's mouth. And then we all turned screaming, louder than the next. But I kind of rushed to a hand surgeon who told me, yeah, you're not going to be playing tonight. And I was sure he didn't understand that we're very popular right now. And did you hear the part about Madison Square Garden? Of course, I'm going to be back there, Anyway, it needed to be set with a pin. My hand was totally numb, and when I got back to the venue, to the garden, the opening groups had already played. The room was full, and they had brought me a guitar backstage, and for the very first time, I picked up a guitar pick and dropped my right hand below my heart, and the big light bulb of gauze started to seep crimson red, and it was
this finger too, right?
Yeah. Trent, we were all there and saw the thing happen, and it was understood that we weren't there to go out, kind of limping out there, and so Trent made the call, cancel it. We got to be firing on all pistons if we're coming out here, and I just kind of collapsed on the couch, and then just tried to check out. I was so upset, and I could just hear the rush of CB radios, and U2 had just arrived, and talking about how they're going to make the call and how they're going to band out before or after the announcement, and it was hard. And later I had learned that my uncle, who was in the audience, again before cell phones, and was shuffling shoulder to shoulder with everybody else who was exiting the building, overheard someone who heard on the radio that the show was canceled because the guitar player got his hand chopped off. And so, that got back to my mom. It took like a day to talk to her, and then it was a bad scene.
Good times.
But we did make it back the next night. I think we had 3 shows left of the run before end of year break, and I was able to come and just basically just hammer on the chords and be at the mic, and we made it up, I think, the following 2 nights.
And pull it off.
Chris had to announce it too. He had to go. I remember he had to go out there, and they thought it was going to be a riot.
Thanks a lot.
I thought I was going to get murdered up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was not fun. That's my least favorite being on stage story, is having to tell a full Madison Square Garden, sorry, we can't play. It's like, damn.
But we can go see Killing Joke at the Limelight that night. So we did.
I feel sorry for your mothers. When you were starting out, they must have been very stressed out about a lot of these moments. I wanted to rewind to the actual, making the Downward Spiral, because that is this defining record and this defining moment. And I was reminded, I was watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood back when we could watch films in cinemas, and was reminded of where that album was recorded. And I'm just wondering if you knew that was special at the time, what you were creating. And maybe this is one for Chris or Trent.
Mr. Brennan, please.
I knew it. That was an experience like anything else, like living in that house we were there almost 2 years, I think. They finally threw us out because we were running late, and we were going month to month, and then finally the landlord's like, you got to go. And we stood in the I'll back up, but we stood in the driveway, and there was a bulldozer, and we're like, the minute the last box was out of the house, bulldozer just right through and demolished the whole Tate house. Like just gone now. Obviously it was gone when we watched it get demolished. It was really bizarre. But being there and everything was, people always ask, was it scary? Was it haunted, creepy, and all that? But those questions have been answered a million times over. But just something about the whole experience of being there and doing it and the time of it. And it was actually fun. Like every day was fun. And there was it was just another adventure that happened up there. So it was one of those things where it wasn't like where you had booked the recording studio, you got so many days, and you got noon to midnight, you got your 12-hour walkout session. It was, you could kind of work whenever you wanted, and we'd have people up all the time, and it was just a fun time. We lost several. What?
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say we lost several days playing Wolfenstein: Spear of Destiny on an old PC. That was the game du jour back then. I mean, so it was kind of, it was just one of those weird times where it was super creative. It was like probably the most creative time because everything was just everything was right there, and it flood came over and for quite a while. It was just one of those things that, I mean, I'll never forget it.
Did you get scared at all? No scared moments? Do you remember the time I had a scared moment there? And I'll quit talking so much in a second, but I'm like, how the fuck do you get scared? But we went to see Depeche Mode and at the Forum, and after the show we hung out at their hotel. They had like a party or whatever, and I remember Chris and I we left early and Trent stayed there. It was the three of us that went, and Trent stayed at that thing and hung out with the band or whatever, I think. And anyway, we went back, and I barely knew these dudes at that time. And I was staying in the main house. Chris stayed in the guest house, which you can get killed in the guest house too, from what I heard. But he was in the guest house. And so I don't know that house at all. Trent's not even there, and I'm sleeping. I'm trying to go to sleep. And they got these old school phones that have they have little cubes with lights when someone, many lines or whatever. And I didn't know shit about the phones or whatever. And so I'm like laying there. I'm excited because I'm trying to basically auditioning for the band, and I'm trying to fall asleep. And I just saw Depeche Mode, one of my favorites of all time. And congrats to them, by the way. And anyway, so I'm trying to go to sleep, and then all of a sudden the light comes on, and on the phone right next to me, I'm like, fuck, someone's in the house. And I'm like, I know, because Spin Magazine and shit, people knew what was going on in there. I'm like, oh no, they're gonna think I'm Trent. They're gonna kill me. And I was like, but the light, like I said, the light came on the phone. I have no idea. So I thought for sure someone's in the house on the phone. And I was so worked up and I don't know how this can happen. I got so traumatized and worked up that eventually I just scared myself to sleep. And I woke up in the morning and it was all good. And then come to find out, I saw Chris the next day, and he's like, oh, I told him what happened. He's like, no, dude, the phone in the back house is also connected. And I came back to talk to my girlfriend on the phone, and I sat on the phone with her for all night or whatever. I'm like, so anyway, now shut up. That place was scary.
I think about some of the material you put out over the years, whether it's, music videos pushing the boundaries on MTV, what you were pulling off, throughout those since you started till now, really. But, when you look at pushing the boundaries, is there any particular thing you're particularly proud of, Trent, about what, because you weren't taking a safe route with this band?
I mean, I can look back with clarity, or I can, retell the story the way I choose to remember it. But in general, I think because the project started off placing integrity and vision first and success secondary, it was going to happen or it wasn't going to happen. It set a blueprint that allowed the focus to always be just try to do the best thing you can, not try to sell the most records. And again, this is looking at an early 90s kind of mindset where it was different than it is now. Feels like the climate was different. But I looked at it as if I have the opportunity to push myself as far as I can, or try to make something that excites me to the fullest degree, I hope there's an audience that will follow me down that path, but they might not. And I'm talking about Downward Spiral. you know, it was a really fertile time when we wrote that record. You know, we had the experience of Pretty Hate Machine and Broken. We had a couple years touring under our belts. We finally had some money to invest in equipment. We were living in a studio essentially. A lot of ideas about what we wanted to pull off, and it felt, you know, it felt like a good time to really push oneself. And it wasn't, how can we take these million or so records we sold and quadruple it? It was, how can we now that we have a label behind us that will let us do what we want, and we have a little bit of confidence, let's really try to push the envelope into what we wanted, what we've always wanted to make. Now we kind of might know how to do that. And when I turned in Downward Spiral, you know, I was extremely proud of it, but I was sure it was going to be the end of any commercial success, you know, because it didn't feel to me like a record that sounded like anything else, and there wasn't any singles, in my opinion, you know, and the fact that it found its audience, I'm proud of that. You know, it kind of set the tone that stick to your guns, do what's right, and I'm proud that we were able to never feel like compromise, you know, in the scope of things. You're faced with endless decisions. You know, playing Woodstock was a decision. It felt kind of like a sellout at the time. We'll pay you a lot of money to be on this potentially corny, you know, nostalgia trip of a Pepsi-sponsored Woodstock, you know, the antithesis of what it might have meant back in the 60s. That one show, though, paid for elaborate production through the rest of the tour. Well, fuck it, let's try our best. And it winds up being what it was. But sticking to your guns is the short answer.
And making the most catchy song, put fuck in the chorus.
I was just gonna say, so working on the record, Flood's over there, and Trent comes out in the morning. We were making coffee. We had the coffee going in the kitchen, and Trent's like, "I got the lyrics," because Closer, the music was already there, and it was like, "That's the single. Like that is going to be the single." Trent starts reading, and he's like, "I got the lyrics done last night." We're like, "Cool, let's hear them." Trent gets to the chorus, and just Flood and I look at each other like, well, that ain't a single anymore, man. That one's gone. He just he just took the most pop thing that's been written so far and just shot it right in the face. And I just remember thinking like, oh man, but you know, but look at it now, right? Who's laughing now? But I remember that clearly. God, it was like one of those things that were like, oh Jesus.
I think the record that really grabbed me on a personal level, I suppose, was the Fragile. That's where, you know, I listened to that countless times, and I feel like I discovered whole new genres of music through that album. But, you know, I also feel like that was probably, you know, things were getting pretty hectic, and that was a crazy tour. I remember seeing you at the Big Day Out in New Zealand, I think sort of 2000. You know, I represent, in my mind, that record is everything, and yet I know that for you guys it was probably a pretty difficult time touring things. You know, that was a fairly full-on time in the band. Is that fair?
No, that was my personal worst I'd ever been. I was in bad shape with addiction, and that tour started off crippled. You know, I remember, not to get heavy, but I remember Robin calling me out right at the beginning, like, "Is this what this is going to be like?" Yeah. And me feeling shitty about it, and collectively, all of that kind of weighed into me eventually getting my act together. But yeah, that was not the high point of my life.
Yeah. You muscled through that though, man. I don't know how you did that, because you would like torture yourself in between shows, because it was the Big Day Off tour, all these days in between. And anyway, I don't want to say too much, but I know that Trent would. Anyway, I shouldn't say anything. But that's thuggery at its finest. I saw him really. I don't see it the same way that he does. That was strong.
And
Glad
then
to be
I
alive.
guess, and I interviewed you, Trent, when you were in Australia for the With Teeth tour, where you were in a very different phase of life. And I know Atticus, that's when you were, you know, you started this relationship with Trent as well, which has led on to some amazing things. I'm wondering what that album was like coming in on?
Well, we'd met probably a year, somewhere in that region before. Like I moved to Los Angeles with my wife in 2000, and we were in a band that had been on a few labels in England and ended up on Nothing Records. And so we were going down to New Orleans initially to work on that record, to finish it. And it is nearly finished now. Hopefully it'll be out soon, just 20 years late.
I have it if y'all want it.
But anyway, and prior to that, we'd arrived in Los Angeles, and I just got to mention, because Danny very kindly reached out. You know, it's kind of weird when you move to a new place, obviously. And we thought we'd be here for a year, maybe. And I did have a son. Well, it's complicated. I won't go into all that. But Danny reached out, and we started hanging out. Took me to Nozawa. I remember it was a classic part of Nine Inch Nails history. That restaurant.
Now called Sugarfish now.
Where, but not the same. Anyway, so I go down and we do some work on that record, and then a couple of other things that also didn't come out. Then we started on With Teeth. So by the time we started on With Teeth, we'd actually been working together for a while, and it was pretty. I would say things were going well. You know, we used to work 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, because, like Trent mentioned, he was easing into a new way of life, as it were. So we'd work intensely, then have a break. Work intensely, then have a break. And but it's interesting because that record as well was a successful record, I suppose. If you're looking at it in terms of those terms, which one wasn't in the making. But I don't ever remember, and I've never remembered any time where there's ever been a case of, let's focus in on try and write a single or something like that. It's always been an organic scenario. But yeah, that was where it started with Tees.
Yeah. And Alessandro, that's where you kind of joined in things, right? With the live lineup. How did you come to be in this band?
Yeah, I came in pretty much towards the end. I think they were at the Village, at the studio, probably mixing, if not finish, pretty much. I met Alan Wilder and Atticus and Trent.
Alan Mulder. Mulder.
No, yeah, I'm older, sorry. But, you know, Alan Wilder is Depeche Mode, so they get in. So there's a connection. All right. And they played me. I remember, aside from the audition itself, which is a longer discussion that I don't even know if it's the case to get into, but I do remember Atticus playing me All the Love in the World, which was, I don't know which track was going to be. And I remember feeling, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to be now. And one way or another, I'm going to make it happen. Then there were events, aside from the audition itself, that I felt were cohesive with the idea of becoming part of this family. One being the shared passion for modular synthesizers that I had with Trent, and technology in general. I remember it was the first time that I saw a vintage Synthi AKS, which is like a suitcase-sized synthesizer. Synthesizer was a Trent's at the Village, and he let me play with it, and to me it was, mind-blowing. And it was really, really weird, because I do remember driving back in my old 1989 Saab that would overheat from the Village, feeling kind of weird, because part of me is like, this is I have to be doing this. It felt so natural to be in that environment with these people that I've never met before. But also I was like, are you an idiot? I mean, there's tons of people that were at the audition that have, 4 times the skills, not only on keyboards, but to be a live player and whatnot. I had never. I mean, I toured professionally before, but nothing to the level of Nine Inch Nails. But it was a very weird and magical period, very stressful when it started. You know, when I got the call that I was welcomed in the family, it started to be a very stressful period, but not stressful as in negative. It was just very intense. There was a lot to learn, not only technologically speaking, but from a communicational point of view. You know, you're learning to live with new people, and you learn that certain ways that maybe you feel you're being expressive, aside from language barriers, might not be the best way to be expressive. So I feel lucky that I've been given both, you know, the platform to hone myself as a human being from a conversational point of view, and musically too, because, you know, as we talked before over the phone, you know, if you look at where I was when I joined Nails, technically and, you know, technologically speaking, if you look at pictures of the rig and the last few tours, you realize that Trent was never, no, don't use that, or don't do this and don't do that. He was always open to new things, new approaches, new ways of, if not reinventing, re-embellishing and presenting his compositions under a new light for the live show.
And what was it like, Alan, you coming on board to the band? Because, you know, I think you were 20 at the time.
I was 20, yeah. So it was 2009, and it really kind of came out of nowhere, because, I mean, by that point in my life, even though I was 20, I'd already been playing music for 12 years, and I'd been in a handful of bands. But really the way it happened is a friend of mine who had worked with Nine Inch Nails for years before I was involved, I believe, recommended to Trent to watch the drummer of this band play, which never in a million years would I expect Trent to actually go watch this band. But I guess the dressing room must have been that close to the stage at Reading and Leeds in 2008 or whatever it was, and saw me play. And it was about a year later that I got an email from him asking if I was interested in auditioning, and of course I was. So I auditioned somewhere on the East Coast in late 2008. I think it was New Hampshire, and it was during the Lights in the Sky tour. So I was auditioning on stage in these massive freezing arenas with this elaborate production that hadn't been revved up yet for the night. But it was an awesome experience, and similar to what Alessandro was saying, where he felt this is what I need, this is where I need to be at that point when he joined. I felt the exact same way when we showed up for day one of rehearsal. So I'd gotten the job, and they still had to finish the tour. So I had about 2 months or so to learn the 8,000 songs or whatever it was to be ready on day one of rehearsal. But after being the guy who was always irritated at the lack of professionalism in every other band I had played with, showing up day one, seeing how on point everything was, I was like, finally, this is where I'm supposed to be. So it's funny listening to like Danny, Robin, and Chris talk about Days of Chaos, and even Trent talking about lack of professionalism. That doesn't compute to me. I don't comprehend that, because I've always seen Nine Inch Nails as almost operating at a militant level of precision and professionalism. And I just think it's a reason why we've gotten along so well and worked so well, because I'm very much of the same mindset. I never want to be anywhere or doing anything unless I'm on my A+ game, because I never want to be caught off guard.
Well, if you want to reproduce chaos, you got to break it down into rules, and you got to, you know, those rules have to be pretty precise.
But at this point in time, no broken bones yet. I did dodge one mic stand. I hear that Chris was less fortunate at some point in time, but But it was a great experience, and it was such a big step up for me at the time, where after getting the, because as I said, we rehearsed at sound check, and Trent was like, all right, let me go talk to the guys and we'll get back to you in a couple of minutes. So I'm sitting there thinking, did I blow it? Did I do it? How's this going to go? And when I was then invited into the Nine Inch Nails family, I then watched the show, which anyone who's seen any footage of that, it was an incredible tour with production. And I'm watching this thinking, this is too good. I'm probably going to get on the plane tomorrow, go back to San Diego. It's going to go down. It's just not going to work out for me. But it was great and a colossal step up for me. And I always look at it as sort of a pinnacle of sorts. So it's been great.
Did you audition at Soundcheck or something?
I did, yeah.
And then you hung out and watched who Freeze? Who was playing?
Yeah. Josh was playing.
Awesome, man.
Yeah,
that was fun.
Let me correct one bit. When what was the name of the band you were playing in again?
You know, I've kind of scrapped it from my history.
Oh, okay,
but
I have actually legitimately forgotten. But
good.
We were playing.
I'm boycotting that band too.
Reading or Leeds. Those shitty. I don't like those festivals, and I shan't be playing them again. But I remember I was wandering around. I wasn't told. I was wandering out, and I caught a little bit of the band, and I was mesmerized by you playing drums. And I thought, you couldn't not watch him play. It was like John Bonham. It was incredible, you know. And I assumed you were Welsh or part of that camp. But I did make a note to say, look, I've lost my focus again. Hold on.
I've lost my focus.
I'm mesmerized by you, Alon, as well.
Oh, thank you very much.
Look, you're gonna get.
Anyway, I made a note. We got to track that dude down, and then someone said, "Oh no, he's from San Diego." So
yeah.
Well, thank you.
It all worked out.
It did.
Yeah.
That's what you said. You saw him at a show. Then you saw him play first. He wasn't a recommendation. You saw him play.
No, we were on the same festival, and I
didn't know
their
that.
band play. Yeah.
What's funny is that the singer of that band is actually a colossal Nine Inch Nails fan. So when whispers were circulating that Trent was watching the show, he kind of got a bit of a puffed chest, and somebody's like, I think he was watching Alon. I don't know. So that kind of put a pin in that balloon. But yeah, it was great. And I have to say, though, Alessandro and I kind of missed each other for a couple of years because he left right when I joined. So it wasn't until
well, we made up for it for sure.
We did, yeah, absolutely. But so it wasn't until a few years later, Hesitation Marks, that we had then been in the band together, and it's been fantastic.
Great times.
Who was playing keyboards when Alessandro wasn't?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, when I joined, because Alessandro and Josh left at the same time, that was the first time Nails had been a 4-piece. So that's when again Trent really started kind of trying to push me. Okay, if you can play piano, do it here. If you can play that there. And then as the tours progressed, it became more ridiculous. Can you play cello here?
And Justin too.
Kazoo there. Yeah.
That's it. Okay. I was like,
it became
Justin
a challenge.
Johnson. Yeah.
It became a challenge to see if I could dream up something he couldn't do. And I've yet to find that thing.
Yeah, people always ask me, like, what's the most bizarre thing? And not that this is particularly bizarre, but I recall rehearsals for the Tension tour. Trent came up to me and was like, so do you play the cello? And my response was, not yet. And he's like, okay, well, I'm willing to get you lessons if you want to take up the challenge. And I was thrilled. I mean, I have a cello as a result of it. But so I've been on stage as a cellist of sorts, and that's all because of Trent just trying to push me.
He's that kind of dude. He's that guy.
Fuck
you know him, you hate him,
And he can sing like a bitch too.
I thought you would have said that the weirdest thing was Robin doing yoga before showtime. But
well, you get used to that. I mean, once it's like,
I know
you hear a tour manager.
It's the pants. It's not the yoga itself. It's the weird pants.
No, see, you're missing most of it out.
It's
it's
like the
warning.
surgeon pants. They're all green. The surgeon pants.
Dr. Yoga. No, but it's okay. You have an hour till the show, and for me, that's like, okay, I have about 40 minutes more before I start doing anything. But for Robin, it means,
and it's just like doing yoga.
It means either he's in his underwear or his medical pants doing yoga, then it's makeup time, then it's whatever bizarre routine he has. And what's funny is that I remember seeing footage of the band and Robin and being like, that guy looks terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know how that's gonna go. And then you meet him and he's wearing clogs and he's so soft spoken. It's like I don't even know what to think anymore.
Don't go visit him. Don't go by his hotel room either, because like yoga's not the problem. You're lucky he's got a guitar in front of him, but he's just naked and not worried about it. And he's already like dressed his room with like tapestries. And,
my favorite thing on a day off is
How to do it.
stepping out for an hour to maybe go eat, but Robin's just like elaborately
Wandering.
dressed up with scarves. He's got his in-ears in, can't hear anything, and he's just wandering the city all day long. And he's got that look where you don't know if he's ever going to make it back, but somehow he's there on stage for the next one.
Love it.
he's always fucking with his patches, right? Is he still that way?
I'm still working on them. Yeah, they'll get
Concerned about you still got
Robin
to teach
is-
me that lick too, by the way.
He's still working on sounds for the wretched. That's kind of an inside joke.
I'm gonna throw out to some fan questions soon, because I know a lot of you are watching this, and just whatever medium you're watching, and just type in your questions and I'll bring them in. But just I was curious for each of you. Has there been a thing that's genuinely surprised you on this journey so far? It could be in your personal lives, it could be in the band. I think of Nine Inch Nails essentially winning a country music award. Is there something where you just sort of went, oh, you know, I've seen a lot, I've experienced a lot, but I did not expect that?
Well, I personally, if I could start, I didn't expect that something that some people can consider a job, whether it's playing in a band or not, for this long, can change you, can change at the same time as you change as a human being. So to me, it was as useful professionally and personally as well. Which I don't know how many, and you know, that's why I never call it a job. I mean, there's a paycheck involved, but that doesn't make it a job. It's just it's been fucking crazy, man. From every aspect, from the people that we met, how our relationships have changed, and how we all improved or changed the way that we play our instruments, and found new instruments to play, new music to write, old music to rearrange, and also changes people in the process. And most of it together, because for extended period of times, we were all together, you know, and we've learned how to keep our boundaries, you know, and stay away from each other, but also spend time together, have a great time. So to me, that's the most important thing, because to my knowledge, you know, I've known plenty of people that love their jobs. I know plenty of people that love the personal life, but I don't know many people that can say that the two things are so intertwined, you know. And it also shaped my own personal life to the nth, you know, to an extent that I can't even describe. So, so fuck yeah.
I was tripped out that David Bowie was actually not pretentious and super cool. That's something that I got to experience.
I'll add. I don't know that I might be going jazz with your question, but to
please
add to,
because at this point I'm the jazziest. So
yeah, it'd always be exciting, thrilling, a little scary when we'd have a meeting and Trent say, "Okay, so we're gonna kind of flip everything, and whatever we were doing that was working, we're not doing that anymore." And the first time that I kind of really experienced that was the Bowie tour, the Outside tour, because we were kind of coming off the never-ending downward spiral run where it was happening, and we were going to go back out. There wasn't a new record, I don't think, but Trent had kind of come to us saying, there's no aged, deteriorated set design. Now everything's stainless steel and clean black, no starch, no lint. We have a different approach. We're getting rid of the wedges out front. Burn your wardrobe You know, was the same batch of songs, but now we're kind of reorganizing the ingredients, and you know, nothing gets broken. A lot of the things that we kind of knew we could rely on, we were intentionally removed so that we could grow into something new and different.
Yeah. And how has that been for you, Trent? Because I think surely probably your perception of what Nine Inch Nails is probably different to what it was when it started. You know, how has your thinking shifted on this? I mean, it's just interesting that, you know, you were going to be inducted just as you, but you were like, no, that's not the case. I'm bringing these guys in with me. And I think that says a lot.
I think what's surprised me over the years is that it feels relevant. It remains feeling relevant as a project. You know, I think initially, you know, when you're younger, you think of the term, if I make it to 30, you know, or I'm not going to be doing this when I'm 40 for sure. And I am surprised that as I've gotten older and time has passed by, and the feeling of trying a new record or creating music, most importantly, and then choosing to maybe display it to the world or perform it live, you always go into it very cautious and kind of, let's see how this feels. And if it feels like you're putting on a costume and pretending you're somebody you're not, then it's time to not do that, you know, and respect what it was and not just grind it into ashes. And from my perspective, and I think I could speak for everyone here, it feels like we haven't reached that. It's been malleable enough. The songs have been malleable enough that they can grow with us. Some don't, but a lot do. A lot mean different things than they did then. And the last wave of touring, I felt as proud as I've ever felt. Not in a nostalgia show way, just in a not in a look he can still stand upright way, but in a this is fucking, you know what I mean? Yes. But in a it really feels pertinent and necessary and needed, and seeing that reaction come back from an audience feels cool. Still feels cool, or we wouldn't do it. You know, that surprises me, because I certainly wouldn't have imagined that years ago. You know, and I'm still pleasantly surprised and grateful that it happens now. And when it doesn't, it'll be time to focus on something else. You know, because in sticking with the non-compromising attitude, that also applies to just why continue. You know, if it reaches a point where it's just to be a job, then let's not do it. Let's respect it enough to respect it. You know.
Mm-hmm.
This maybe relates a little bit. A lot of questions are coming in, and I thought I might throw some of them into the mix, and it's sort of relating to what you were just talking about. What do you foresee, this is from Aaron, what do you foresee sort of the live experience being in this world we're living in at the moment, where, you know, the world for all of us is very different? And I mean, how do you see the future playing out right now?
Let me not answer that question and quickly mention something else. When we got inducted, or asked to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you know, initially it was easy for them to say it's just me, because it can be reduced to being, it's Trent Reznor. That's what it says on that record. You know, and a campaign began to say, no, it is this collection of people, and the convincing of the people, that the gatekeepers, that this is valid for very valid reasons. You know. And I saw some blowback of, well, why didn't you include this person or that person? And the truth of it is, we tried, but there's a limit to how many they're going to give us, is a reality. And it was difficult to kind of whittle down, a little bit difficult in the case of a couple people. You know, I'd love to see Charlie or Rich Patrick, or, you know, there's been people that have been important to the band. But if it were up to me, everyone would be here. It's not a matter of trying to snub anybody. You know, it was just a practicality of, it's their thing. The rules were what they are. and this is what it is. So let's now continue with that question that
I got lucky.
Yeah, what was that, Danny?
I said I got lucky.
Yeah.
No, you're part of the DNA of the band, Danny. You know, you are.
If you were all in a room in Cleveland, would there be anyone that would be awkward to bump into that you were going to invite along, or do you think you're at a point now where everyone's kind of, you know?
Well, Robin is
water under the
always kind
bridge?
of awkward to bump into. I love you, Robin.
Would it be like Martin Gore?
What, did you mean from the band or just in general?
In general.
Just in general, you know, there's been record label battles over the years. There's been all sorts of stuff going on. You know, is there anyone that would be like, oh, a bit awkward to bump into?
Nobody fucks with Trent. Trent got no beef.
Yeah.
No, I mean, from my perspective, there's not really any, you know, I'm not holding on to any kind of resentment towards anybody. I'm not saying that's reciprocated the other way, you know. And I'll fully admit, you know, at times in my past I've been difficult for a variety of reasons. You know, immaturity, power corrupts, it does. You know, having your life upended by success and fame distorts your personality. Add drugs and alcohol in there is a recipe for, you know, I've not been my best at times, but in the present, I don't feel there's any kind of outstanding resentment I'm really holding on to. Let me think about it though, maybe.
But brood on it for a little bit.
But Alon doesn't want to run into that band, that's for sure. Whatever that band is.
They won't be there. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. One of them won't be there anywhere, right? For quite a long time.
He's getting in buggered somewhere right now.
So that was a good question. I forgot what it was.
Yeah, no, just the future, I guess, of like the live. I think every probably musical group and everyone is considering this as well, what the future looks like as far as playing live and, you know, you guys getting together in a room again. Do you sort of have any reflections or thoughts on how things are looking?
Well, we had a tour booked right now that would have been winding up. I don't think anybody is dying to hear of someone strumming a fucking guitar, you know, singing covers on the webcam. We're looking at holding some shows for next year, but it really will depend on. We're not going to do that till it's absolutely safe, and I'm not optimistic that it will be. In terms of any kind of elaborate webcam or, you know, live broadcasts, at this point, it hasn't felt like something that we haven't thought deeply about it. You know, maybe as the need to perform increases over the length of how long this lasts, we'll reconsider. But there isn't any. We'd want to do it something in an interesting way, not a band playing in an empty room somewhere. You know, and it hasn't. I haven't, quite honestly, felt particularly creative during this pandemic. You know, Atticus and I have been working on film stuff that's just finished. And it's kept us busy, but I haven't felt like, well, finally I've got the time to write all that stuff I've been wanting to do. I've just kind of felt like I'm trying to survive and stay, avoid depression, you know, avoid thinking about how the world could be in a situation like it is right now.
Yeah, I think we're all trying to do that at the moment, even over here, marooned in New Zealand. Mm-hmm. Jeff wanted to know which, and this is a question for anyone that wants to take it, which Nine Inch Nails album did you have the most fun making? It's a big question.
Silent creeps over
there. Who's been there?
I'll jump in on one of them. Year Zero was an interesting one because it was made. A lot of it was made on a laptop in the back of a bus while touring. It wasn't like some big fancy recording studio. It was literally in the dressing rooms and the, you know, and I think it kind of governed the sound of the record because it was a record made without, you know, the luxury of, like, if you look around this room, there's well, you can't see it, but there's tons of shit in here and whatnot. It was very much about what can we use that's at hand that isn't very big and can be easily transported. And I particularly like that record. I particularly like the way it sounds, and I think that the way it sounds is a result of the kind of restrictions which were just, part of the process, as it were.
I agree. I was going to say the same thing. Also, because it didn't feel like as serious an endeavor, because we were just chipping away at it. Like when I think of The Fragile, which I love that record, and I have as bad as my life was kind of getting while making it, it was also a time I cherish. But that felt like, this is a record. This is going to be a big record. This is going to take a long, long time. It's a serious record, and it's going to, it's not going to be done quickly. And sometimes the weight of that became burdensome, and it felt difficult. It had a lot of tentacles, and that makes it a little less fun sometimes to deal with.
Head Like a Hole wants to know, can you please tell them there's a weird New Zealand band named after one of their biggest songs? I'd love to know the reaction.
What's the song?
Yeah.
The band is called Head Like a Hole. They've been making music down here for a very long time. They just wanted to pass that on.
Isn't there a band called 10-Inch Dicks or something like that from down there? Honestly,
Probably.
Remember that trend? It's some Australian band with whatever. Head like a Hole rules. I like the early stuff best.
Yeah.
Look, just so probably going to start wrapping up soon, because we've probably all got lives we have to live. What's your all-time favorite song to play? Maybe this is a quick fire round for each of you, starting with Alessandro.
All the Love in the World.
Chesnical.
It was the first song that I heard. It sort of put me on a path, and took a while to really make it sound appropriate for live. I think we've tried 3 or 4 different lineups to make in 3 or 4 different ways, and only in the last tour actually it finally materialized in a way that wasn't necessarily like the record, but with the spirit of a record, but with a live entity. So that would be my favorite to perform live.
We had to fire a lot of people to get that song to sound good.
Robin?
Boy, what comes to mind is Hurt, actually, because
it's just you up there.
Would have said fucking the wretched solo, I would have said, but
I think because it's a moment when
there's a light on me.
My body fully
I taught you how to play it.
Like
Robin, you fucked yourself. It's done. It's done. There's no way out of this.
Trent just lost focus again.
Yeah.
You're finally getting it, Alon. You wanted to see what it's like.
I have the moment to kind of really take in the audience's receival of the song, and also because I kind of can go inward and really just adhese what my playing with Trent's voice, and just if there's any push or pull in there, I'm really focused on the moment.
That's what she said.
Chris?
Robin, is that a knife in your hands? What you've had this thing in your hands for the whole thing. What is it, a knife?
Yeah.
Is it? Well, I want to see it. What is it?
In case it goes badly.
Bottle opener? What is? No, it was great. Everybody saw it.
Chris, what was the song that you love playing?
It's called a flaccid penis.
It was Always Happiness and Slavery, because back then we were playing the songs more literally than you guys are now. And the challenge of taking 17 different kick drums and all those different snares and playing those weird polyrhythmic beats and doing it all live. Just working out the sticking on how to play it, because people always thought back then that everything was on tape because we played it pretty accurately to the albums, and it was like, fuck no, this is all live. Just wait till Trent destroys everything and you'll hear that nothing keps going, in the background or whatever. But yeah, that song was always it was just such a technical drumming challenge, and I just always loved playing it.
You and Trent would like do a drum off at the end, pretty much, right?
I know, yeah, and he had that keyboard that was mounted to the drum riser down there. Yeah.
Cool. Alan?
What comes to mind is March of the Pigs. I mean, just always starting that off every show feels like.
I knew you were going to say that, so I left that for you. I just want.
Oh well, thank you. But you know what? We mentioned Happiness and Slavery. We did do that one on the
Yeah, but
on the
that
last
fucker's
tour.
also playing the piano. He steps off the fucking riser and then he plays the fucking piano.
Well, here's what people don't realize about that part of the show is, we're playing to a click. It's exciting.
What?
But when we get to the piano part,
2020.
When we get to the
What are we playing
longer, when we get to the longer piano break where it's just Trent singing and me playing, there's no click there, but the song's still going to come in at the same point. But Trent knows that I have to run back to the drums, and he sometimes enjoys pushing it to that very limit where I'm sweating, not because of any other reason other than sheer panic of needing to run back. And there have been times where I've had to leave him there. I'm like, I can't finish these chords, and I can't, so I'm out of here. That's fun. I know we were asked to do one song, but for the longest time, everyone was wondering about Perfect Drug. So to finally kind of unleash that live on this last run a couple of years ago, felt good, and you could feel the sort of gasp that it was in the set that night. So that was obviously fun as a drummer. So I snuck a second one in there, but there you go.
That's what she said.
I like it. Atticus?
For me, it's whatever comes first, because I'm just so nervous once I get onto the stage.
Once that cloud of vape smoke.
I know I can let go. Yeah. And it's a fun. And it's the first one is a fun one. So
what's the first one? Whatever it is?
Whatever it is. Generally, it's Branches and Bones on the last tour.
That vape cloud disappears. You see the crowd for song two.
You can see that. Have there been any clouds? None. I'm vapeless. Dan is making up for me.
I turned you on to that.
Yeah.
Trent, you've been playing some of these songs for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy playing Somewhat Damaged. I like, because I feel it's hard to sing. It's exhausting physically, and the band always feels super tight, and I feel proud of that, having that engine. But also, when you said All the Love in the World, I realized I have a mental block about that song. Like, I can't remember what key it's in, and I have to play piano at the end in a very significant featured way. And I'll think of this, I can feel it coming up the part, and I'll think, I don't know what key it's in, and I hope that my muscle memory lands on the right keys. And if I don't think about it, I'm okay. But if I think about it too much, there's been a couple tremendous,
very significant,
unfakeable fuck ups that I've pulled off at the end of that. That's a moment I always. It's like a roller coaster. Who knows what might get injured.
I have a question for Trent.
Yes, Danny?
Was it weird singing Hurt with Bowie before Johnny Cash and all that stuff?
Tell you what, it was one of the most awesome moments of my life, and that was one of those times where the Bowie tour came at the end of the Downward Spiral 2.5-year run of shows, where life had significantly changed and gotten stranger and more surreal. And we started that tour playing theaters. We had to cancel those shows to book up to arenas and multiple nights. And all of that happened without really a lot of time to hit the pause button and kind of understand what was happening and recognize it. And finishing that tour, leading to the Bowie tour, when I get a phone call from Bowie saying, you know, I made this strange album and we really want your band to go on tour with us. This is my hero, you know. And like, as you mentioned, Danny, getting to meet him and get to know him, befriend him, and find out he's actually lived up to being as cool as you've projected him to be, and in ways you hadn't expected. And to be on stage with a song that means a lot, something very intimate to you, which Hurt does, you know, and then to hear that voice that you've listened to so many times, you know, singing it with you. That would be a moment on stage where I'd go, I can't believe this is even happening. And this is, I've never dreamed. Wow, man, am I lucky, you know? So, yeah, felt cool.
It was a cool version too that they did.
Yeah.
And Danny, what's your take on the song that you love playing?
I should have thought about one. I don't know. I think
Mr. Self-Destruct.
Mr. Self-Destruct. Wish. I think Wish, though. I don't know why. I just love that song. I actually, I played in a shitty industrial band that opened for Nine Inch Nails when they did a warm-up show before Lollapalooza in Houston. Trent, I don't know if you remember Houston, but y'all played a warm-up show, and I got to see the sound check, and they were playing Wish. I guess he had just kind of come up with it. Probably the first time they played it live. And I can remember, so it was really cool because I got to sit in there and watch them play. Like maybe they played it 2 or 3 times. They were working through it. The second time it played it, I felt like I knew all the words, and it's just such an anthem, and I love that song. But I do have something more interesting. I know why the election counts all fucked up, and I'm going to make an apology because I got the dude hanging with me that was supposed to deal with it.
I feel like we could talk a lot longer. We probably should wrap this up. What are you all going to be doing tomorrow when you're getting inducted in this very strange way of all being in your own homes?
I'll be
going to take a moment.
What's that?
Are you going to
take a moment?
I'll be turning 49 years old.
Your birthday's
happy
tomorrow,
birthday, Robin!
Happy birthday.
Well, I hope it's a really special time and you do take a moment to take it all on board. And it's been so nice to have you all in the same virtual space. Are there any parting shots any of you want to have while you're all together? You know, Trent, maybe you want to wrap this thing up. I feel like I shouldn't be the one wrapping up. Maybe you should be.
Well, to anyone watching that's a fan or been there throughout the years, it's very much appreciated and never taken for granted. And we're all grateful. To everyone on this call, it's been great seeing you guys. I love you all. And I'm proud to be on this journey with you guys. And David, thank you very much for being the MC here, my friend.
No, it's been a real pleasure to do this. So thank you.
Yeah, and thanks to Trent for including me. I didn't expect it. Really cool. And I'm going to watch Tickled.
Oh, thanks, Danny. And thanks for making it along, Danny. I know we had a bit of panic that you weren't going to make it, but it was really good to have you here. You add a certain energy to a room.
Yeah. I know I saw that the comment said I'm on drugs or something like that. But I'm looking for a job.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, David.
Bye. Welcome to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It was the sound of New York. Raw, corrosive, infectious music.
They called it glam rock.
Throwing away old rule books.
I want to be like that one day.
Was the greatest song you ever heard.
Her music will live forever.
Peace and love.